Wow. Here we are. 10,000 subscribers. It's like a fucking dream, man. I can't put into words how thankful I am for everyone who decided to ride along on this channel's rise. But not only that, but the rise of substance awareness and the rise of the way of the psychonaut. I really appreciate every single one of you, and if time warranted it, I would send everyone a personal thank you message. But since that shit's ridiculous, how about I just make more videos for you guys? I really want to focus on being committed to uploading consistently, and I know the last year there was a 2 to 3 month period break I took, and that shouldn't happen again, nor will I let it happen again. I love making these videos. I love looking into substances the way we do. I love it from an entertainment value as well. I just fucking love this channel, and boy, let me tell you, when I say this is the start, this is only the fucking start. I'm hyped as fuck for what we got coming up. But let's actually get into the special. I've been talking about this ever since we hit 5,000, which was our first time trying 1P LSD. This will be my first time trying Diphenhydramine, or DPH, or benadryl, whatever you want to call it. It happened literally the day after Evan and I first tried dextromethorphan. Now let me lay down some background for those of you who are unaware or just need a refresher. Evan is a homie of mine from high school. We met through track and field, where we would find a very similar interest, and that was substances. Once we were out of season and had free time is when we ventured into what I call Chapter 1, Beginnings of a Psychonaut. This is basically a portion of my life where I stepped into the world of drugs with my buddy Evan. We tried a variety of substances, where you can find a majority of the prior ones in the Chapter 1 playlist, and I'm hoping we can complete this playlist this year. But why were we interested in DPH? I mean, initially, it was and still is through psychonautics purposes, to see life through different lenses, experience what experience can be and whatnot. Now I'll admit that at the time our attitudes were a bit more juvenile, seeing that we didn't want to waste no time at all to try another substance, but we proceeded in a safe and cautious manner. Looking in on this particular day, I didn't see Evan until late afternoon. No, I did wake up with somewhat of an afterglow from the previous day's DXM, so that may have ended up playing an effect later. But, as always, Evan scoops me and we go smoke a blunt. Now, Evan and I were both super intrigued by DXM, but more intrigued that it was possible to get high like that from something you can get at the grocery store. Because of this, of course, we were just researching as much as we can about anything really, and decided that we should try something else that day. At first, benadryl wasn't our first choice. We noted it was an option, but saw that most people didn't end up enjoying their experiences. I remember Benzedrix or propylhexedrine was being considered, but we decided against it since it was already getting late and Evan specifically had to be up early for work. And I do think there were some other options, but I think we had to go out of our way or get it online. I noted to Evan that benadryl would be sedating, so we wouldn't have trouble falling asleep, and we looked into it more. We knew we can just get that shit down the street, no problem, and eventually we just said fuck it. Let's go on another trip today and see what's up. So the plan was, let's grab this benadryl real quick, start tripping. Then Isabel told us that after she was off work, Cindy planned to come through and scoop us all, including Grace, and have a decent sesh that night. If you don't know, these were some girls a part of our friend group at the time. But that sounded fantastic to me. We both wanted to make sure we would be able to smoke during our trip, but in actuality, I don't really think it helped a ton, and we'll get into that a bit later. But we decided upon a dose of 300 milligrams. But with any dose we tried the first time, we didn't want it to be too strong or too weak, and I would say we hit a good spot at this dose that led us to see a lot of the effects. So we hit up the store, grab a 24 pack, which was a perfect split, head over to Evan's crib and take them in his room. Evan was a bit more anxious with this one because we weren't necessarily expecting the best of effects, but we actually went in with some optimism. Once we downed the pills and we were waiting for the come up, I was getting some butterflies in my stomach, thinking, man, we're about to trip again. We're about to be in this whole new world to explore right now. So we hang out in Evan's room, and it's almost 6 when we took it, and it took about an hour to come on. The first thing I noticed was a slight change in perception. Things seemed a bit darker and less defined, and at the time, We always love to look for changes in our eyes, so we shine flashlights in the mirror and we see our pupils have grown much larger. That's how we knew we were in it. Now as I progressively come on, I start to get thoughts of worry and feelings like there's something there or there's something not right. At the same time, I try not to be a bitch, and I'd say being tough has helped me through quite a bit of experiences. Not always, but this night in particular was one where I did experience a lot of anxiety and did have paranoid thoughts, but never really let any of it out or broke down. And I wouldn't say that any of these effects really started to happen until we left Evan's place, which, when Cindy came by, it was around 8. Isabel ended up driving, Evan took the front passenger, while I ended up behind him next to Grace in the middle and Cindy behind Isabel. Evan and I were acting a bit strange, like our voices were a bit jumpy, and our eyes were probably darting around a bit more than normal. So instead of us trying to hide it from them, we just told them we did more DXM, which I remember Isabel saying something like, "Y'all some crackheads," and they rip on us more later into the trip. But we go to pick up some more bud, and this is when I start getting anxious. The car ride wasn't like any car ride I had before. For whatever reason, I began to feel more and more vulnerable, and I was expecting some weird scary shit to start happening in the trip. I got worried too of just strangers, or that the cops were gonna pull up out of nowhere. And I know the girls were just talking about who knows what, but all of that just went past my head. I mainly was just looking out the window, while Evan seemed to be doing the same. We both answered questions briefly, and we were just in the experience at this point. My heart rate went up, and coupled with the anxiety I was going through, it was just very physically uncomfortable at the time. I think I had some slight muscle spasms too throughout the experience, and was just a bit jumpy. Also, something that sucked, that progressively got worse, was that my legs itched often. I'd gotten some mosquito bites a few days back, so the feeling was just intensified. I began to think that bugs were crawling on my legs though later, so it was very far from desirable, I'd say. Though with all that, I was relatively intact, able to comprehend what was going on, didn't experience any hallucinations yet, and could conversate appropriately enough. But anyways, we drive to the Plug's house. It wasn't in the most welcoming neighborhood, which didn't help my anxiety any bit. Then we park outside this dude's place, and it feels like an eternity for him to show up, and even when he does, I feel like the exchange just takes way longer than it should be. But everything's fine, of course, and we end up driving around. This night, I'm pretty sure a lot of driving did happen, which led to me being confused about where we were actually going, but they decided that we should go smoke by the river. Basically, my town has this river running through it, and there's like 5 bridges or whatever for people to get across. Boats come across all the time, and below it, you can stand by the railing or just sit in some seats there. So we drive there, and I'm still worrying about all this bullshit, but at the same time just looking, expecting some hallucination or something to pop up out of nowhere. And I'm pretty sure we had some music playing at this point. Now these girls love to play some hood trap, like Ludfoe, Young Poppy, Chief Keef if you know them, which is a harder kind of vibe, and I have to say, it really didn't mesh well with the trip. If you don't know, some of their songs can have like a heavy feeling to it, somewhat aggressive and rough, and I'm pretty sure it contributed to the way I was feeling. But overall, the music wasn't any better or that worse, but just somewhat odd and there. We eventually get to the river right by this park, and I was somewhat relieved because I was able to get up and move around, but once I was out, it really didn't make much of a difference. I get a chance to get a word with Evan and say, "Man, this shit's crazy. Something just feels wrong," which he agrees to. He noted he felt a bit confused and like there was something bad that was going to happen. Grace rolls up, I think, which takes a minute but feels like a long ass time for me, and I'm just looking all over the place. Things were dimmer, but still no pronounced hallucinations or bugs or anything. But this would change once we smoked this first blunt. We decided to find some seats by the river once it was rolled up. Evan and I were already sitting down when the girls came up, and as soon as they came up, there's this cockroach that just crawls across the ground in front of me and Evan. Evan and I stare at it in disbelief, somewhat abhorred by it, like, oh shit, what else is about to happen? But Grace and Cindy just scream, saying gross or whatever, and I'm pretty sure Isabel just comes and stomps it. It was real. Though it was real, I feel like it set a vibe for the rest of the trip that was to come. Some real hallucinations. Once we smoke this blunt, my body relaxes a bit, but my mind stays right where it was, taking this in and looking for the next thing. And not much happens until we decide to leave. Isabel brought up her dad needed a ride from the bar, so we got ready to go. Once I turned around and faced the road, far away down the road, I spotted a dark figure walking our way. I couldn't see a face as I'm pretty sure they were in a trench coat and hat, but I couldn't see any skin at all. The person had a really creepy vibe. I pointed it out to Evan and he saw the same thing, almost like it wasn't a real person. He says, "Let's just go." We hop back in the car, which was faced the opposite way of where the person was walking. Isabel pulls out and we start driving the way where the guy should have been, but we drive by and there's no one there. I want to point it out to Evan, but not out loud. The thing is, I didn't want to give any signs of panic or anything that would suggest we weren't having a good time or something was wrong. The thing was, we didn't need that kind of attention from the girls or a lecture when we were experienced and all that. So we just keep quiet and they blast the music. And it's like the way it was before. I'm in the back seat looking out, somewhat worried about police or some other threat, but mainly wondering at this point if there's going to be any more hallucinations that are just going to pop up and scare the crap out of me. I guess the most unsettling thing about it is you don't know when it might happen or in what way. But we drive through town, which again feels like forever, but takes like 7 minutes, and we get to Isabel's dad. This was my first time ever really meeting her dad, which he hadn't really been around too much in her life, because I think he was in jail for meth possession or something like that, but they were trying to work out shit, you know. So Evan ends up in the back seat as we squeeze 4 in the back. I remember hearing this guy saying too that he was about to get some ass once we dropped him off at this chick's place. Like, just ridiculous. But then we drove around some more and nothing really else happened. Not until we smoked again. This time we headed back to Evan's place and just lit up in the whip and hotboxed. As we were smoking, I was looking around, still expecting some bad shit to pop up, and I start getting glimpses of something in the car. I didn't know what it was at first, but it was bothering me for sure. I kept trying to spot what it was, and finally, I see a wasp just glide by in the car. At first, I just close and rub my eyes, seeing if I'm just tripping, and I try to see if it's still there. It takes a minute, but I see it again. A huge black wasp. I was just thinking, man, I am not fucking with this shit right now, and just speak up and say, somewhat panicked, "Yo, what's that?" "What is what?" both Cindy and Grace asked, since they shared my view somewhat. And I'm like, "That." I pointed in the space of the car. "Is there a bug flying around?" And they're like, "Where?" Then they turn on their flashlights, and there's nothing there, and I quickly make out what I was actually seeing. The smoke floating by. "Nah, there's nothing there. You're just tripping, man," Cindy said. "If there's a bug in here, he would have been smoked out already." And I just couldn't believe it. Evan didn't experience any bugs though. Once they turned off their flashlights, the wasp was starting to come back a bit too, so I just ended up turning my attention back outside. Then following this, since they saw I was tweaking a little, they were saying things like, "You guys shouldn't be doing that cough syrup shit," even though it was allergy medicine this time, and things like, "I knew people who got addicted to it," and "You can overdose," and shit like, "You're a real crackhead if you need to take over-the-counter medicine to get high." But I could barely articulate the reason as we wanted to try DPH and how we weren't in any danger, but I can admit that we should have waited before tripping again. And I have to note that the dry mouth was pretty shit, but I did have water on me, so I was faring okay throughout. But we hang out for a while more until like 11. Evan decides to cut it off here, which I don't blame him. This far in, I was beginning to feel a little more drained from the heavy sedation and somewhat tired of having to worry about getting scared, on top of which he had to be up at 6 in the morning for work. So the girls ended up dropping me off, and I was pretty much planning to knock out right away, but I was starving. I remember having some chicken sandwiches and some other shit, but let me tell you, I fucking smashed this food, and it tasted fucking amazing. I can't deny this. It did increase my appetite quite a bit, and I thought food just had a much richer quality to it. But though the food had a better quality, everything else was still kinda garbage. I remember trying to watch YouTube, but I just kept getting distracted, thinking that there was something on the wall. Then I would look at the carpet and start thinking that there were little gnats or something crawling out of it. I did keep my light on though, figuring it would be worse with it off, and I pretty much just smash and then decide, fuck this shit, I'm going to sleep. And I shit you not, as soon as I lay down, I'm out like a light. The following day, I'm pretty sure I ended up with like 10 hours of sleep. But once I'm up, I hit up Evan to see how the rest of his trip went. He told me that he quote unquote woke up with withdrawals. What happened was though, when he woke up, he ended up puking and feeling like shit, having to call in sick. And I can't say I know why exactly this happened. It was probably due to the after effects, but it may have been due to his water intake or food intake or just not getting enough sleep. But the day afterwards, I felt like garbage pretty much. I wasn't motivated to do anything, I felt super tired, and things were just duller in general. So overall, it wasn't the most enjoyable experience ever. There weren't really very many appealing aspects about it, especially physically. Physically, I was very uncomfortable, and just the anxiety about it wasn't the best either. But I do know once you get into higher doses, that anxiety somewhat does diminish completely, I hear. But beyond that, I'm still happy to have experienced it. It was a unique experience. Not as unique as the tour maybe, but we'll get into that someday. Maybe at 25K. The thing is, what are we going to do at 25K? I don't know yet. I mean, there's a lot of substances we still got to go through. But, 25K is the next goal, right? It might be 20. I might set it at 20K. But, yeah, maybe the tour. Maybe something like LSA. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what's up. We'll see what happens, how we grow, and how fast we come out with the rest of the story. So, if you guys did enjoy this video, subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video. Comment something below. Any requests for anything at all, let me know. Follow the socials. Thank you for 10,000 subscribers. It's been someone that's no one, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.